In this video, we'll review XML and DOM and how they relate to Genero. As you have learned, XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. XML is a markup language, much like hypertext markup language, but XML was designed to carry data, not display data. XML tags are not predefined, and each program that uses XML defines their set of XML tags. For example, in Genero, our form tag is very specific to a Genero form. XML is a W3C standard, and most importantly, XML doesn't do anything. It's flat text that is tagged in such a way that it can structure, store, and transport information. Now the DOM stands for Document Object Model. The DOM models the flat text XML as a set of node objects. So you can think of the DOM as the XML in memory, where each element in the XML is represented as a node in a hierarchical node tree. The DOM is a W3 standard for how to get, change, add, or delete XML elements. So it's the ability to manipulate the XML elements in memory as a set of nodes. Genero's Abstract User Interface, or AUI, is a DOM document. So each of the objects that are represented in that DOM are accessible, and they're a node in the hierarchical tree. To access those nodes and to manipulate them, you can use Genero's methods. For example, setAttribute allows you to set an attribute of a specific node in the tree. Now, setAttribute is simply a subset of the DOM API that, again, is a part of the W3 standard. Now, in Genero, our XML might look something like this. Here is a form that's been built, and the 42F file is simply XML represented in elements and attributes, the structure of the form. Now, when that form is read into Genero, it is read into memory and it becomes a DOM document. And as you can see on this slide, what is represented on the screen in the running program is represented as a node in the hierarchical DOM tree. And you can say here this page, orders, is referenced right here as an object, and you can see on the right some of its attributes. So everything that's represented in the Abstract User Interface can be accessed, manipulated, modified, deleted, changed, etc. So when we say manipulating the DOM, that simply means to access and affect the DOM nodes representing the objects in your program. So on the prior slide, as we saw, for example, that particular page that was labeled orders, if we needed to make a change to that page, we could access that particular node and either change some of its attributes, perhaps the text associated with it, or we could remove it entirely from the DOM tree. All of these changes that you make to the nodes can be done programmatically, so while the program is running. So no longer do you have a fixed user interface, but instead in Genero you can manipulate your user interface while the program is running by using some of the methods available to manipulate those nodes. So again, the DOM tree is not a fixed structure. In fact, it's very fluid and can be changed while the program is running. All changes to the DOM tree will be shown immediately to the user. So what the user is seeing in the user interface is a representation of what is in the DOM tree at that moment. So some things you might see in the code in terms of manipulating the DOM. Some of the methods include things like setting the text. So here, if we assume W is a specific window object, we're using a setText method, which is really going and setting the text attribute of a particular node in the tree. So again, a Genero method is using the DOM API to affect that DOM document, but we have some nice, easy methods for you to use. Another example would be assuming this F is a specific form node, or a form object, we're setting an element hidden. So we're finding a particular element in the form and we're setting it to be hidden. Again, another method that is manipulating the DOM tree. Now we can also just traverse the DOM, or specifically go and use DOM node methods. Let's assume n is an actual node in the tree, and here we're specifying to call n.getNext, and that will return to us the next node in the hierarchy. So the next node in the hierarchy from the position that we're in, assuming n is a particular node in the tree. And lastly, we can also, assuming n is a node, we're going to create a new child in the tree. So another method that you might see or want to take a look at is create child, where we're actually creating in the tree a new child node from a particular position that is of type label. Now once we have a new node created, we can go ahead and use a set attribute method to set the attributes for this new node. So here's set attribute. The name is going to be LB1. We're setting the color of this new label node to be blue, and set the text of this new label node to say PO Box. So here again, just to give you a little bit of a reference of how the DOM is used in Genero, remember that the DOM is XML in memory, and that all of the objects represented in your user interface are also represented in the DOM tree, and as such can be accessed and manipulated with the methods that we provide in Genero.